I know what you're thinking. I know you're saying, oh, this is probably just a clickbait. There's no way Hulk Hogan was actually in this show. But it is true. Hulk Hogan was on this episode of 205 Live and he was actually wrestling. This is Marty Phillips for Want to Talk Wrestling, and I'm going to explain you how and why Hulk Hogan was on this episode of 205 Live in this very special edition of 205 and 205. First of all, we need some context, and this actually responds to a new way WWE decided to start putting up some shows, and they already did this with NXT UK this week. On this week's episode of NXT UK, we saw Andy Shepherd from the brand introducing some NXT UK talent, choosing some matches they believe should be highlighted. We got guys such as Dave Mastiff, who chose Dynamite Kid versus Tiger Mask from the Madison Square Garden on 1992. Also, Kenny Williams, El Ligero, and the A-Kid, the Spanish wrestler, who chose Cesaro versus William Regal back from NXT 80 in 2017, which is so far the last William Regal match. Regarding 205 Live, it was announced earlier that Brian Kendrik was going to be in charge of this week's programming, a guy that has more than 20 years of professional wrestling experience, a guy that has quite an interesting career with WWE. He's one of the pillars of the 205 division, and he's the second-time champion, and he was actually the champion on the first episode of 205 Live back in 2016 on a losing effort against Rick Swann. We start 205 Live with Tom Phillips, who explains that Brian Kendrik was tasked with choosing the matches for this night, matches that made him, matches that were important for his career. And her first pick is the main event from Wrestlemania 6 in Canada, the WWF champion Hulk Hogan versus the Intercontinental champion, the Ultimate Warrior. See, Hulk Hogan was on the episode. This pay-per-view is very famous for being the pay-per-view where Hulk Hogan was gonna pass the torch to the Ultimate Warrior. Some current talent has said that they were part of the audience as younger. Edge and Christian was there, DDP was there, Renee Young was there, and the recently released producer Lance Storm. If by any chance you've been living under a rock for these past 30 years, spoiler alert, for his second choice he went for a match that it was more meaningful for his career, and considering his history with WWE, he went for the quarterfinal match against Kota Ibushi in the Cruiserweight Classic back in 2016. Of course, Kota Ibushi more well known for his career with New Japan Pro Wrestling, where he has been IWGP Intercontinental, Junior Heavyweight Tag Team, and Never Openweight Champion, and also winning the Best of the Super Juniors, the G1 Climax last year, and the New Japan Cup. For Brian Kendrik, he considered this match to be his final chance with the company, considering this was, in a way, his fifth return into WWE. He started with WWE back in 2000 with a developmental contract with Memphis Championship Wrestling for about a year. Then a quick one-year gimmicky run from 2002 to 2004. He came back to WWE in 2005 through 2008 in what is probably his most proficient run, where he became a Raw Tag Team Champ with Paul London, and he's still the second longest running Raw Tag Teams just beneath the New Day. Back in 2014, he came back to the company, this time as a trainer, where he was tasked to train the participants of the Tough Enough reality show and some female talent. And now he was given this opportunity to come back to the ring as a cruiserweight. Before we went into the full match, we got a little recap of both of their wins on their second round, where they defeated Tony Nese and Cedric Alexander respectively. The match is of course a great example of the New Japan Pro Wrestling style. It's gnarly, it's full of high spots, and it's one of those matches where you wonder how these guys are still walking. If you are not very familiarized with the New Japan Pro Wrestling product, this is a great recommendation for a must watch. This is a kind of a match that you could expect to see in the G1 Climax or more specifically in the Best of the Super Junior pay-per-view, basically any big pay-per-view from New Japan Pro Wrestling, and it's definitely way more accessible to watch. So this was this episode of 205 Live. I think we are probably going to continue doing this kind of approach to this episode, especially with 205 Live and NXT UK. And still we have the Cruiserweight Inter-Champion Tournament being held on NXT every Wednesday. So still we have some 205 action going on. And we're going to be here every Wednesday and every Friday or Saturday to tell you what happened regarding the 205 Live division and the Cruiserweights from WWE. So once again, thank you for watching. This was Marty Phillips. Subscribe, like, and see you around.